Hello, students. You're welcome to the third topic of this course, EDU721, Psychology of Learning. In this lesson for today, we are still looking at the theories of learning, but this time around, focusing on Thorndike's theory of connectionism and Bandura's social learning theory. Both of these theories are categorized under the behavioral theories. Both Thorndike and Bandura, but there is a little bit of difference between the ideas of between the meanings of learning as explained by Bandura and the meaning of learning as explained by other behavioral theories. You are going to learn all of those in this lesson. So in this lesson, we'll start off with the theories, with Thorndike's theory of connectionism, whereby we'll be looking at the principles of his theory. We'll look at the three major laws propounded by him, by Thorndike, and we also consider the classroom implications of this theory, how we're going to apply the principles in our classroom situations. Then we will discuss Bandura's social learning theory by looking at the tenets of the theory, looking at the ideas behind the theory, and then we'll also consider the classroom implications of this theory. So sit back and enjoy the lesson. Thank you. Like I said, we are still treating the theories of learning, but this time around, focusing on Thorndike's theory of connectionism and Bandura's social learning theory. Yeah, what are the learning outcomes, the intended learning outcomes? After completing the lessons of this topic 3, you'll be able to describe the tenets of Thorndike's theory of connectionism. You'll be able to describe his law, the laws of learning, and then discuss the classroom implications of that theory. Then the green highlighted part is the aspect of the social learning theory. We'll describe the basic principles of social learning theory. You'll be able to explain the processes involved in social learning theory, and of course, discuss the implications of the theory on classroom situations. Yeah, we're starting off with Thorndike's theory of connectionism. What is this theory talking about? How did Thorndike explain learning? How did he see learning? According to him, all learning involves the formation of connections between a stimulus and a response. These connections become strengthened or weakened by the nature and frequency of the stimulus response pairings. Okay, before I explain further what he means by this, let's illustrate the experiment he conducted about a cat learning to escape from a puzzle box by pressing a lever inside the box. After much trial and error behavior, the cat learns to associate pressing the lever with opening the door and escaping. How did the cat come about doing this? Thorndike placed this hungry cat inside the box, and then outside that box, out of the reach of that cat, was food, was pellets of food outside the box. And then he watched to see what the cat would do. So the cat made several attempts to come out of that box, but couldn't. But as time went on, after much trial and error behavior, the cat eventually stumbled on the lever. Yes, I forgot to mention that. There is a lever inside that box that can open up, that can, when you press it, it will enable the cat to escape from that box. So the cat stumbled on that lever, and the box opened up for it to escape and to eat the food that was placed outside the box. So he did, the cat did the same thing the next time it was put inside the box. Then after several trial and error, mind you, this was done through trial and error because he never knew the position of the lever. It was through moving around, through random movement inside that box, that it stumbled upon that lever. So after much trial and error behavior, the cat then learns to associate pressing the lever with opening the door and escaping. The cat learned how to learn that, oh, so it is this lever that enables the door to open and enables me to escape to eat the food. So this stimulus response connection, the pressing of the lever and opening of the door of the box, the box door, and escaping, which is the response, became established. It became established because the cat, it resulted in a satisfying state of affairs, meaning that the cat derived satisfaction from it. It enabled the cat to escape from the box and for it to eat food. So what Thorndike took out from that experiment was that all learning involves the formation of connections between a stimulus, which is like that lever, pressing the lever, and the response, which is the opening of the door and escaping and getting the food. That's the beats of responses, you know. So this connection will become strengthened or weakened by the nature and frequency of the stimulus response pairings. We shall look at that. So let's progress. Based on this experiment, Thorndike was able to derive 3 laws of learning. 3 laws of learning. They are, okay, the law of readiness, the law of exercise, and the law of effect. Let's start off with the law of readiness. This law states that a particular state of affairs will prove to be satisfying to the extent that the subject is ready for it. What does it mean? We will use the experiment, the experience of that cat, to illustrate some of these ideas in Thorndike's theory. Okay, so a particular state of affairs will prove to be satisfying to the extent that the subject is ready for it. Look at the case of that cat inside the box that pressed the lever, and then the box opened up for it to escape and for it to eat the food. That eating of the food, the cat was able to press the lever, which is the stimulus. Pressing of the lever becomes the stimulus in that case. And then the escape from the box to eat the food that was placed outside becomes the response. Because that response resulted in a satisfying state of affairs. So it means that that cat will continue, when put inside the box the next time, will likely press on the lever for it to free itself out of the box for it to eat the food. The same thing is applicable to us humans, to us learners. A child will learn best. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I was explaining another law of effect. Yeah, law of readiness. I'm mixing up the whole thing. Pardon me. Law of readiness states that a particular state of affairs will prove to be satisfying to the extent that the subject is ready for it. Yes. What this is saying is that a child will learn best only when it's ready to learn. Remember the cat that was placed, the hungry cat that was placed inside the box. Because it was ready to move about randomly before it stumbled on the lever that enabled it to escape from the box and eat the food, it was ready for it. It was the hungry state of that cat that made it ready for it to move around. So the same thing is applicable to the learners. A child will learn best only when he or she is ready to learn. Looking at it from another aspect, students who are exhausted or in ill health cannot learn. So as teachers, we have to borrow a leaf from this. When our students are ill in the class, they cannot learn, even though they are sitting down and they appear to be listening. They are not learning anything. So that is the case of explaining the law of readiness. Children can only learn when they are ready. We all know that. You don't take, for instance, a 2-year-old child and place that child in a class like primary 1 class that is meant for 6-year-old children or 5-year-old children, as the case may be. That 2-year-old child will not be able to follow through the learning, no matter how strategic you are in planning the content of that lesson for that child. That 2-year-old child will not be able to follow because that child is not mentally and psychologically ready to grasp the knowledge that is meant for a 6-year-old child. That is the law of readiness for you. So let's look at the second law, the law of exercise. This law of exercise has 2 parts. The first part is the law of use, and the second part is the law of disuse. What does the law of use say? The law of use states that the more often an association between stimulus and response is made, the stronger the connection will be. What is it saying? The more you associate a stimulus with a response, the stronger that connection between the stimulus and response will be. Let's take the case of that cat once again. The cat was able to learn that pressing the lever will enable it to escape from the box and to eat the food. That is the stimulus response. That learning came about through a series of trial and error until it became associated and was made stronger. That connection was made stronger. Having done it off and on, that connection became stronger. So the same thing happens. It shows that the more you do something, the better you are good at it. We have a saying that practice makes perfect. That saying is reflective of this law of exercise, the law of use, this aspect of the law of exercise, that practice makes perfect. We often use that phrase in our conversations. Never knew that we actually saying the actual thing about this law, about Thorndike's law. So it's from that phrase that, it's from this law that phrase was derived. What about the law of disuse? It's just the opposite of the law of use. The law of disuse states that the longer an association between a stimulus and a response is unused, the weaker it becomes. That is, the lack of practice brings about forgetting. We all know that, in our daily life, we all know that if you don't practice, you don't keep on doing something, maybe a skill, practicing a particular skill, you tend to forget how to use it. Take, for instance, someone who learns how to drive a car, and then for some reasons, for some years or something, the person didn't drive that car. The person didn't drive that car, perhaps, probably the person sold off the car, and then for about 8-10 years, no driving of car. The next time that person wants to drive a car, that person, you agree with me that it may not be too easy for that person to drive the car unless he practices, he refreshes himself or herself about the art of driving again by just learning through refreshing his memory. So that is an illustrative example of this law of disuse. That is, the longer an association between a stimulus and a response, driving of that car is now the stimulus. That car is only that car response, stimulus, yes, then driving of that car is the stimulus. The longer that association between is unused, the weaker it becomes. It's just a fact. That car driving stuff I just gave is a typical example of this law of disuse. Well, let's look at the third of the laws, the law of effect. Yes. The law of effect states that the stimulus-response connection is strengthened by a satisfying state of affairs and weakened by an annoying state of affairs. Let's take the case of the cat once again before I make reference to learners. Look at that cat. That cat manages to press on the lever that got it extricated from the box, that made it to escape from that box to eat the food outside the box. If maybe on another instance, the cat found itself inside that box with the food. No, the cat found itself inside the box and presses on the lever and manages to come out of that box looking for the food. If by this time, instead of the food, somebody outside gets a cane and beat up the cat and then put the cat back inside the box, what do you think the cat will do the next time? Do you think that cat will want to press the lever again, having received that kind of negative experience of the beating it received? Do you think it will want to press the lever? Your guess is as good as mine. The cat might not want to press on the lever in order to receive the punishment, that beating. Nobody wants to be punished. We all want to be praised, and we all want something, we all want a satisfying feeling. We want to feel satisfied. We want to have that feeling instead of annoying feeling. We don't want that. Nobody wants that, not even the cat, not even the animals. Nobody, no human or animals want to experience any negative state of affairs. So when the connection, when that pressing on the lever, that's the stimulus, when the stimulus and the response escaping, when the stimulus that is received is a positive one. Remember, initially it was receiving food, and it's happy. The next time it increases the probability that that cat will continue to press on the lever for it to go out to eat the food, because it is receiving a positive response, which is the food. This time it's receiving a negative response, which is being beaten. That is the punishment it's received. So yes, when that stimulus, when the action of the getting out of that box is followed by a negative response, the action of pressing on that lever will not be repeated. That's exactly what this law of effect is talking about. So let me make the reference to our classroom situation. The learners in the classroom. You ask a question. For instance, you ask a question and your student raises the hand to answer the question. You call upon the student and the student gives a good response, correct response. You praise the child. Oh, good, John, for that right answer. Oh, thank you for that right answer. The child will feel satisfied, we feel happy, isn't it? Yes, because we humans, we all want to feel good when commended. We want to feel, everybody wants to feel good. You know, we all love to be commended. We love positive commendation, praises. Nobody likes the opposite, likes the punishment. If on the other hand, a child raises the hand to answer a question and the answer turns out to be, the response of that child turns out to be a wrong answer, and the teacher gives that child a negative response, like eyeing the child or calling out on the child, abusing the child. Oh, you don't know anything. Sit down. You don't know anything. How do you feel that child will behave? When next you ask a question in class, that child is not likely to raise up the hand to answer any question. And because of that, it's going to affect the learning of that in the class. It's going to affect that child. So it's the same thing, the law of effect. The stimulus-response connection is strengthened by a satisfying state of affairs. What is a satisfying state of affairs in this case? When you commend that child that has given the correct response. Even if the child gives a wrong response, it is you don't have to abuse the child. You don't have to make the child feel ridiculed. You don't have to make the child, put the child down. You know, there's a way you can say it and help the child still feel good about him or herself. You know, so when the stimulus response connection is strengthened by a satisfying state of affairs, satisfying state of affairs means the food that was provided for the cat upon escaping from the box is you calling out on giving out good commendation on students, praising them when they do good, and encouraging them when they even do bad. Those are the satisfying states of affairs. And the stimulus response connection weakened by an annoying state of affairs. Who can tell me what the annoying state of affairs is in the case of that cat? The example of that cat I gave. Yes, you are correct. That is the punishment that the cat received instead of the food. Yes, that's an annoying state of affairs. So it means the stimulus response connection is gonna be weakened. That cat, when it finds itself inside the box, might not want to make any attempt to press on the lever to escape. The cat wouldn't want to escape to go receive punishments. The same thing with the learners. Yeah, so that is that with the 3 laws of learning. They are all important conditions for learning. Law of the readiness, the exercise. Exercise is like repetition. When you repeat, the more you do something over and over, the more you become used to it. Practice makes perfect. And then this law of effect, they are all important as conditions for learning. So let's proceed. What are the classroom implications of Thorndike's theory? Let's take them one after the other. The readiness aspect of his learning is the readiness aspect. Yeah, the teacher is advised to consider the mental and cognitive capability of the learners when planning the instructional content. Consider their age levels and their mental capabilities. The instructional content you plan for a 6-year-old child should be for a 6-year-old child. The ones you plan for a 2-year-old child should be for a 2-year-old child, and so on. And then the learner, the teacher should, the second point, the teacher should recognize the fact that learners will like to repeat the actions for which they receive positive regards. Which of the laws of learning do you think this point is making reference to? Which of the three laws we just discussed do you think this point we just made is making reference to? That is the law of effect. Good, that is, you got it right. The law of effect. People will likely repeat the actions for which they receive positive regards. But when they receive punishment, they will not repeat it. In this regard, teachers should use praise and encouragement that give pleasure and satisfaction in the classroom. You should make use of them more in the classroom and reduce the use of punishment. This point is very significant, especially for us teachers in Nigeria, where we focus on using more of punishment than praise. We hardly use praise. In our classrooms, in our homes, we hardly use praise. Please, it is from this law, from what you have learned, the application of it in classroom, please apply more of it. That is the essence of learning these theories. It's not just for cramming them and memorizing them. It is for us to take out the principles that will help us in managing our classrooms more effectively. Then the third point of the implications of the theory to classroom situations. The teacher should recognize the importance of practice in the learning process. Learning may not occur unless practice is reinforced. So which of the laws do you think this point is making reference to? Out of the three laws of Thorndike, the three laws of learning. Yes, you are right. That is the law of exercise. Law of exercise has to do with practice making perfect. So in the classroom situation, the teacher should give students should engage students in assignments, in homework, use different means of passing the same information to students. You know, is a way of saying you are repeating the same thing, but in different ways. So that is that. I still have other points under this, under the implications. Some of them are also can be found in your lesson notes. I've uploaded that in your course page. You know, you have different resources. You are lucky, you have different resources of receiving the same information, the same knowledge. You have the lesson note, which I've uploaded to your course page. You also have this lesson video. You also you engage in facilitation. So 3 different methods. So you have no cause not to follow up on this, on the concepts of this, of your course content. Yeah, let's move on. Now I want you to pause the video. You need to attempt the following class activity before you continue watching the video. What is the relevance of law of effect on student learning from what we have been able to explain, to learn? What is the relevance of this law of effect on students' learning? Yeah, moving forward, let's come to the, yeah, and that is that with Thorndike's theory of connectionism. Now you know that the basis of Thorndike's theory is that learning is strengthened when accompanied by a pleasant feeling or satisfying feeling, and weakened when associated with an unpleasant feeling. You also learn that the theory stresses readiness, exercise, which is repetition, and effect as the conditions for learning. Yes, so those are the basic things you've learned. So moving on to section B, that is Bandura's social learning theory. Before we continue, Okay, in this section, you will learn about Bandura's theory of social learning, also called observational learning. Why is it called observational learning? Because the theory is based on the notion that people learn through observing and imitating the actions of others. That is why it is called observational learning. So you can either say Bandura's social learning theory or Bandura's observational theory of observational learning. Before we proceed, I want to point out the fact that we said Bandura, Thorndike, they both, as I said in my introductory remarks, they both are categorized under the behavioral theories, just like Pavlov and Skinner that we treated in our previous lessons. They both belong to the group called the behavioral theories. But there's a little difference between Bandura's theory and the theories of Thorndike, Pavlov, and Skinner. What is this difference? The difference is that Bandura's ideas about learning, mind you, all these theories, all these personalities, they found a way of explaining what learning is all about, what learning means. They all have their own ideas about the concept of learning. For Bandura, his own concept of learning was a bit different from other behaviorists, even though he also belonged to the behavioral theories. His own ideas about learning were a bit different in that he looked at learning as based on the fact that people learn through observing and imitating the actions of others, as opposed to other behaviorist theories who looked at learning as a direct result of conditioning. You remember Pavlov, theory of classical conditioning, and Skinner's theory of operant conditioning. As a direct result of conditioning, reinforcement, that's Skinner, reinforcement and punishment. They are all concepts under Skinner. They are all concepts under Skinner. So the three other behavioral theorists, Pavlov, Skinner, Thorndike, share a different view from what Bandura's theory of social learning shares. Bandura's social learning theory believes that people learn through observing. It's not through conditioning. That's what he's saying. It's through observing and imitating the actions of others. So let's progress to see whether that is notion is correct or not. Yeah, what is the theory really talking about, Bandura's social learning theory? Yeah, he believes that, like I said, that people learn from one another through observation and imitation of other people's behavior. Likewise, children learn through observation and imitation. They can observe people around them behaving in various ways and imitate their actions. I'm sure you parents, you can attest to this fact that most often your children tend to imitate what you say or do at home. Children are surrounded by many models. Parents are like models to the children. Teachers also serve as models to children. Characters on TV, their friends, and people they see in the streets. These are people that these children see as models. They see as models because they feel that they can copy the behaviors of these people. Children do copy the behavior of their parents, copy the behavior of their teachers, characters on TV that they admire, and their friends and people, other people they see. They pay attention to these models and imitate their actions. Please mind you, when I say models here, I don't necessarily mean models that are used for maybe commercial purposes, like some of those popular models. I'm sure you know some of them, both foreign and Nigerian models that maybe model for fashion houses, and so on. They are all called models. They are all called model. Anybody you see as your model, but more significantly are the models of that the parents serve, the teachers, and then characters on TV that the children see most often. Through observational learning, Bandura has shown that children learn many things, both good and bad, simply by watching others' behavior. One thing I want you to know, that no child was born with a bad behavior. When a child is born, the mind is just normal. Nothing good or bad is in the mind of that child. The child, as the child grows, the child imbibes all the learnings that occur within the environment, either through conditioning, through reinforcement, or through this observation. They are all right. All these theories, they are all right in their own way. They're all right. They all looked at the meaning of learning from their own perspective. They're all right. So it's whatever the child learns within their environment that they pick up to form all the behaviors that they acquire all through the years. Children learn, and then Bandura came to the understanding that children learn to exhibit aggressive behaviors because they observe others acting aggressively. He conducted an experiment to demonstrate this fact. That experiment, he called it the bubble doll experiment. What does that bubble doll experiment illustrate? What does it show? Let's look at it. The bubble doll experiment. He carried out this experiment to see if aggressive behaviors can actually be acquired by observation and imitation. He got two groups of children. One group, he showed a short film in which an adult model was beating up the bubble doll. Bubble doll is a big doll that is being inflated, that you can box. You can, as if you're in a boxing contest. Yeah, that adult model was boxing that bubble doll. An adult model in this case can be anybody. It can be just an adult, not necessarily, like I said before, a model that is used for commercial purposes or for fashion, to display fashion shows, that is used in fashion shows. Okay, so one group of children was shown this adult model beating up the bubble doll in an aggressive way. Then another group of children did not watch the film. After the film, all the children were brought into a room containing some toys, including a bubble doll. The children who watched the film tended to reproduce the model's aggressive behavior towards the doll. The group of children who did not watch the film did not display aggressive behavior towards the toy. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? So through this experiment, Bandura demonstrated that children could learn aggression by watching the actions of an adult model. It also shows that children can be influenced by watching violent films, movies, or television programs. This is serious. Parents, this is a pointer to us in what we allow our children to watch at home. So some of the aggressive behaviors, tendencies of the child are being copied from what they see. What they see, they observe and imitate these actions, whether good or bad. Let's continue. It has been proven that the individuals that doesn't just observe a behavior and imitate it. You don't just observe somebody and automatically you are going to imitate the actions of that person. No, there are 4 basic processes Bandura found out that there are 4 basic processes or steps which must be followed for the behavior to be imitated. These 4 steps include attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation. What is the attention saying? For a behavior to be imitated, you have to pay attention. Yes, you need to focus on what that person, that adult model, or what that model is doing. If you don't focus, you will not, that's the first step. That's the first step, the first basic step in this process, the process of observational learning, in learning that behavior. The child will not just learn that behavior. These 4 processes must be present. That child must pay attention. If you don't pay attention to that thing, you cannot grasp it. If you cannot grasp it. And then the second point is retention. You must be able to retain or remember what you observe. Retention is an important step too, because the thing you are watching, the model you are watching, or the actions you are watching of that model that you are watching, you must be able to retain those actions in your memory. If there is no memory to retain it, then you cannot reproduce it. You cannot imitate that action. So for an action to be imitated, retention is an important factor. You must be able to retain or remember what you have observed. Then the third step there is reproduction. Reproduction is also an important factor that is necessary for an imitated behavior, for a behavior to be imitated, or for an imitated behavior to be reproduced. For you to imitate that action and perform it, you need reproduction. And what is reproduction? That is the ability to perform the behavior that the model has just demonstrated. You must be able to perform the behavior that you observed. But of course, however, there are some behaviors you might not be able to perform. For instance, watching Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris expertly executing a series of correct moves doesn't mean that you can reproduce those correct moves accurately. You might just enjoy it, but you may not be able to. That's an exception anyway. Some of these behaviors or actions are the exceptions. But most often, most of what the child sees, or most of what an individual says, you want to imitate. And what is it that will make you to also imitate that action? Motivation. That's the 4th step in that process. The 4th step, you will reproduce the observed behavior only if you are motivated to do so. And whether or not you are motivated depends on what happens to the model. If, for instance, you are watching, you have paid attention, number one, you have paid attention, you have focused, you have been focused on what the model is doing, and then you have been able to retain the information of that action in your mind, and then you have been able, you can reproduce it. Another determining factor that will show whether you will really reproduce that observed behavior is motivation. Whether you see, that is, if you see the model being reinforced for the behavior, for that action, you will be more motivated to copy that action. But if you see that model being punished for that action, I'm sure you will run. You wouldn't want to imitate that action at all, because seeing another model being punished for an action will deter you from not carrying out that action. That's the role of motivation there. That's the role of motivation. I can also go further to explain it more. I know some time ago, there was this popular actress that did something that wasn't really good. What's the name? Funke Akedele, yeah. She hosted a party that during the lockdown, during that serious period of lockdown last year in 2020, hosted a party, and she was penalized for it. She received a lot of backlash from the public, and she was excuse me, she was penalized for that action. I'm sure her followers, she has numerous followers, yeah, who are her, she's a fan to them, like I would describe, she's a role model. She's a role model to those followers, because if you're not, you don't see someone as a role model, you wouldn't want to follow that person. So any of her followers saying that she was penalized for that action, wouldn't want to maybe do the same thing that their role model has done. So that is what this motivation is doing. It's saying the motivation aspect, the second aspect, that if you observe the model being punished, you would less be motivated to copy the action of that person. So let's go on. What is the role of reinforcement in Bandura's theory? The role of reinforcement. You will recall that all along we've not mentioned about food or reinforcement, just like in the other three behavioral theories. That is Pavlov, Skinner, and Thorndike. If you check any of the experiment they conducted, food has a role to play in the outcome of their experiment. Food, remember Pavlov's experiment, food has a role to play. Remember Skinner's experiment, food also has a role to play. Food in that sense is the reinforcement. And then Thorndike's, Skinner's experiment also, yeah, food has a role to play. So you notice that all along we've not mentioned anything reinforcement in Bandura's theory. But does it mean reinforcement doesn't have a role to play there? It has only one role to play. For reinforcement, what Bandura said was that reinforcement is not a prerequisite for learning to occur. So Bandura is only by observing. You only need to sit and observe that person, retain the knowledge, and be able to reproduce that knowledge, that action. That's all you require, just your observation and imitation. That's all that is required in this definition of learning. Once you do this, that learning has taken place, that child has learned. That learning will only occur simply by observing a model. However, reinforcement, what reinforcement can do in his theory is just to increase the chances that what has been learned will definitely be performed. That thing that child has learned will definitely be performed with reinforcement. Remember, one way of getting that reinforcement is through, I just explained it using the example of Funke Akindele, the popular actress, that is something that they really augur well, that got her penalized for that. If, on the other hand, there are numerous things she has done that earned her accolades from the public and from most people, that earned her reinforcement. Let me use that word, reinforcement. So you, the follower, or any other person, might want to copy some of the ideas or some of the actions that she has done that earned her good commendation from the public. So that's the role that reinforcement does in Bandura's theory. Bandura will only increase, I'm sorry for that slip of tongue. Reinforcement will only increase the chances that what has been learned will definitely be performed. That is what it's talking about. And then an observer or a child will drop a behavior if he finds out that the model has received negative reinforcement for practicing such a behavior. Just a case of that popular actress I used as an example. I'm sure if anybody was thinking about hosting a party, staging a party during that lockdown, wouldn't want to try it again. We never heard again that people staged a party where a large number of people attended. I don't think I ever heard of that. After that incident of Funke's case. So let's proceed. Okay, the classroom implications of social learning theory. As a teacher, A teacher is supposed to serve as a role model for students in the classroom, just as a parent is a role model for children at home. So the teacher is a role model for, since we are talking about the classroom implications, so we just, use teachers. Is a role model for students in your classroom. You are a role model, yes. In this case, you, the teacher, should try to display socially acceptable behavior at all times, because the students are watching. They are watching you. You are their role model. Again, the second point, the teacher should always make sure that he or she doesn't condone any irrational behavior from the student. Any offending student should be appropriately dealt with. When appropriately dealt with, in this case, doesn't mean using severe corporal punishment. I don't encourage the use of punishment. I always emphasize the use of positive reinforcement. I don't encourage the use of corporal punishment in modifying a child's behavior, because it has a counterproductive effect on that child. What you can do, the teacher should always make sure that he does not condone any irrational behavior. Why? Why do you think so? Because when you condone that, other people seeing that particular student as a role model. Remember, we said that role model, a child's friend, can also serve as a role model. Seeing that student doing the bad thing and, might want to copy that behavior. But the onus lies on the teacher to make sure that you discourage any irrational behavior from the students in the class by correcting them using appropriate strategies. So by so doing, other children watching might be discouraged to copy the bad behavior. That's what the second point is, saying that the teacher should not condone, the student. It doesn't mean that you should deal with it using appropriate, maybe that word, any offending should be appropriately dealt with. Probably that phrase has to change, because for most of us, we might think it's using corporal punishment to deal with such offending students. Then the third point, the teacher should not forget to give complimentary remarks such as well done, excellent, good boy, or good girl, keep it up. This sentence is incomplete in a way. When using such phrases, please, such complimentary remarks, well done, please also add the name of the student and the good thing that the child has done. Oh, well done, Jane, for sitting down quietly and reading your book. Oh, well done, John, for sweeping the classroom. Oh, fantastic, Josephine, you're reading, you're doing, just mention the name of the student and mention the good thing that that student has done. In that way, it becomes descriptive. That complimentary remarks becomes descriptive and is going to be, it has more effect on that child than just saying, well done. Well done can be for anybody. So try to mention the name of the student and the good thing that student has done. In that way, it gives more effect on the child. Then the teachers and parents should discourage their students and children from watching violent films and keeping friends of doubtful characters. Yes, based on that experiment Bandura conducted. Yes, the outcome of that experiment. These are the few points. There are more points in the lesson notes I've uploaded in your course page. Go there and have a look at it. But these are the major key classroom implications of social learning theory. So what is the next one? Okay, you have a question here. It's like a puzzle. I want you to solve this puzzle. John is 16 years old. John's parents both drink alcohol every night. They tell Joy that drinking is bad and she shouldn't do it. Joy goes to a party where beer is being served. What do you think Joy would do? Well, that depends on you. And then give reasons. Why? Why do you think Joy would do that? So give reasons for that. We might look at this in more detail during your classroom, during your discussion forum. So on that note, we've come to the end of this lesson for topic 3. Yeah, and then I hope that you'll be able to apply the principles of these 2 theories we have learned in this lesson into your classroom situations. Try to apply what you have learned so far from Thorndike's theory of connectionism, apply them, and then this one too. I'm sure you have learned a great deal of lessons in this topic. So until then, until we meet again, it's thank you and bye for now. Bye-bye.